Given that Thanksgiving was last week, I'll just do a little retro Thanksgiving thing, which is thank you all for coming. Thank you for working these events into your schedule. Thank you for supporting this activity. Thank you for being here and giving of yourself, because these events work well because of the people who come and what they give to the people who attend. And it's the networking and the interaction and the making connections. And I know there are a number of folks in here who have done business with one another. I know there are people in here who have done projects and joined companies because of Club E. And so I appreciate you all being here, supporting the group, and giving of yourself to the community. So thank you very much. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Rick Brimacombe, and on behalf of the Minneapolis Club, Upsize Minnesota, and my group, Club Entrepreneur, welcome to Lessons Learned, a guide to best practices and our best advice to help business owners better understand the myriad of best practices for the categories we're covering today. Upsize Minnesota and Club Entrepreneur has assembled this event. We're going to introduce to you a panel of experts who can serve as your trusted advisors. Upsize Minnesota is a how-to business magazine devoted to helping business owners build bigger and more profitable companies. And Club Entrepreneur and my firm, Brimacombe & Associates, we help inspire business owners like you to achieve more than you thought possible by helping refine strategies, assembling resources, and securing funding. In our efforts to provide actionable content, Upsize Minnesota and Club Entrepreneur offer you today's panel, and as such, I want to introduce you to our event sponsors, and those sponsors are Crown Bank, a community banking firm, Eide Bailly, an accounting, consulting, and business advisory firm, Insperity, a human resources consulting advisory firm, Macleod & Co., a holistic marketing agency, and Tech Guru, a technology services provider. So thank you very much to our sponsors and panelists. And with that, let me introduce you to the panelists. We'll start here to my immediate left and work down the panelist table. Kristen Baas is a certified performance advisory at Insperity. Tanya Korpi McLeod is the CEO at Macleod & Co. John Lindquist is a senior vice president at Crown Bank. Dan Moshe is founder at Tech Guru. And Brad Theisen is partner in charge of the Minneapolis office and a tax partner at Eide Bailly. So thank you very much to our panelists for being here today and sharing your stories and wisdom with the group. So with that, why don't I turn it over to you folks. Again, we'll start down here to my immediate left with Kristen. Tell us a little bit about your bio, your background, and kind of how you fit into our story today.
Hello everyone, Kristen Baas with Insperity, where I'm a business performance advisor. I've been with them for about 7 years, and prior to that I have about 25 years working with small to medium-sized businesses in operations, finance, and also sales management. So kind of a business generalist, I guess you could call me. One of those businesses did grow from 10 employees to 250 employees in 6 years, and then was sold to a Fortune 500 company. So I've got that experience as well with working with a company that just skyrocketed in a short time. Insperity, to kind of segue about what I do now, we're a 31-year-old, $3 billion company. We're an HR solutions company, 65 offices across the U.S. Our local office is in Bloomington, so right here. Over the past 3 years, we've experienced double-digit growth, and I was thinking about our theme for today and lessons learned, and trying to, I was thinking about, why is it that we are experiencing that, and I think it's directly tied to lessons learned in the business owners community right now. So a lot of employers, founders, business owners realize that in today's business environment, it's really complicated to be a business owner. So they're looking for a better way to maximize their talent and minimize their risk.
Great. Thank you very much. Tanya, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Sure. My name is Tanya Korpi McLeod. I came to start Macleod & Co. After spending about 10 years in Europe. And previous to that, I'd worked in big advertising agencies across America, in San Francisco and New York. Moving over to work over in Europe really helped me understand where a lot of businesses kind of don't do a complete view of their marketing and those types of things, and how incomplete that whole approach was. And then being in Europe and seeing that and seeing how cultures really affect that process as well. You may have a complete process, but if you haven't completely understood the different cultures that are working in the organization to bring it all together, you're gonna struggle. So about 10 years ago, we moved back from Europe back to the States, and we also acquired 8 Valvoline Instant Oil Change stores, so franchise businesses. And that, again, really drove home the importance of culture. So that was one of the first things we did when we came in and organized those businesses, was to create a culture and a brand around that to give the people someplace to kind of belong with that. So really, Macleod & Co. is really about boy, I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Strategy is kind of the most important thing with all of that. So thank you very much.
And nothing like mixing advertising and oil changes, right? They're
Maybe that's where my problem is.
testing your abilities to tie those two together. John, tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. Again, my name's John Lindquist. I'm the Senior Vice President, Chief Lending Officer for Crown Bank. I've been in the banking industry for 20 years. I've been with Crown Bank since inception. When we opened it 17 years ago, our headquarters are in Edina, and then we have a branch here in downtown Minneapolis on the corner, right behind us. I get kind of mixed up here, on 6th and Marquette. We're a small business bank, about $230 million in assets, and I currently manage around a $50 million loan portfolio. Obviously, with changes that we have seen in the last 10 years in banking, there's been a lot of lessons learned since the financial crisis. So,
A lot. Like,
I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one that kind of went through it. So.
For all of us, just being here was a lesson learned, right? I mean, that was a tough road to get through. Dan, tell us a little bit about you, your background, and how you got here.
Awesome. Thanks, Rick. So back in 2004, when I was at the University of Minnesota, out of my dorm room, I started this little IT services company that today has grown into about a $3 million company with 10 employees, and we're the IT department for 80 businesses and nonprofits all over the Midwest. So a few years ago, I learned about and we implemented EOS, or the Entrepreneurial Operating System, and that works so well that I don't really have like a day-to-day job at Tech Guru anymore. So in addition to being the visionary at Tech Guru and working on the marketing and finance at a high level, I also have the unique opportunity to work with leadership teams of other companies as well to help them get more of what they want from their businesses too.
And you focus on accounting you have a specialty in accounting firms, correct?
Yeah, I was going to talk about that.
Oh, okay, sorry.
It's part of
Sorry. All right,
lessons
backtrack. I didn't say
Get ahead
that.
of yourself.
Steal his thunder, got excited, I didn't know I wasn't supposed to talk about other things he did. Here I'm trying to, open the door for him. He's like, whoa, hold back. Okay, all right, Brad.
All right, I'll talk about an accounting firm, being we are one. How about? As Rick had said, I'm a CPA. I've been doing tax work just had my 29th year anniversary, I guess. Been with Eide Bailey for 24 years, and do a lot of work mainly with small to mid-sized, closely held companies. Do a lot of tax planning, business advisory. Eide Bailey is a regional firm, which means we have offices around the country, I guess. And we have many specialized services, a lot of international tax, state and local tax, R&D tax credits, cost segregation studies, forensics, things like that can really help our clients, and we feel like we can really serve them with any need that they have.
Great, thank you. One of the fun parts of what I do is to get an opportunity to work with people that I enjoy and like and be able to build relationships with those folks. And a number of the panelists I've done work with, and John and I got a chance to meet each other through this panel. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for your participation. And then why don't we spend a couple minutes each talking about kind of the topic today, and from your lens, your vantage point, your seat, as they say in the EOS world, kind of what's your take on our topic. And why don't we come all the way back down here, and Kristen, tell us a little bit about the HR view of lessons learned, best practices.
Okay, sure. So there's been a lot of HR learning opportunity in the media lately, so I'm going to take a little spin around that and share a different story that we had to deal with. But before I get into that, just a little bit more about Insperity. As I said, we're an HR solutions provider. We deliver with a technology compared with a team of dedicated HR professionals. We understand that businesses, as they grow, they go through a different life cycle, that they have different HR needs, everything from a startup to an emerging growth company to maybe a company that's scaling via mergers and acquisitions. Maybe you're planning an exit strategy or launching a new product or service and what that might look like. So along that spectrum, you all have different needs. There's on each of your tables, there's like a bigger Insperity brochure, and there's a little graph in there that kind of outlines that a little deeper. So if you're interested, you can take a peek at that. As you might suspect, there's never a dull moment in HR. And in light of recent events, we've seen an increased interest in our clients seeking sexual harassment training and tightening up of that policy. Shocker, right? No way.
Do you get a bunch of business in Washington, D.C.?
Yeah,
Okay,
Clamoring.
all right,
like
just
you
checking.
just, like it's like open up the headlines of the day, right? Okay. But a lot of those are really big companies that are headline grabbers, but the small to medium-sized businesses that we work with are certainly not immune to those exact things. So here's a local client who I'm not going to disclose who it was, of course, but the week after the Harvey Weinstein story broke, this client contacted us. They were a brand new client. They had literally onboarded with us about a week before then. They contacted us because an executive at this firm had sent a email to a staff member with sexual connotations, and the staff member then shared it with another executive who then called Insperity to help them work through the situation. So we promptly opened an investigation, got our EPLI group involved in that. We reviewed their existing handbook. We hadn't reviewed it yet, so this was the handbook that they had in place, and I think the last time it was reviewed, I think they said 4 or 5 years ago. So we looked at what was in there regarding this type of a situation, and guess what? Vague, blurry, nothing concrete. So what we did is we recommended, since this was a first-time offense, that the executive receive a written warning and counseling. This is a small company with 25 employees. They don't have an HR person. In the past, their HR was done by their administrative person who is wearing multiple hats. So the advantage of having Insperity come in and handle that situation is that that executive, who is the office administrator, was really in no position to counsel this executive, this leader in the business on this type of a situation. And so that's an example, and this is, like I said, this is a small business, 25 employees. So this is where an example of there's risk out there, and small businesses are just as open to it as these big businesses. So this is happening in our community. So let me see. So in those types of situations, we want to be really respectful to the person who received this email. But the outcome of not handling that situation effectively could really be catastrophic to that business. So at the end of the day, lesson learned is that we're trying to keep the business safe, keep the business running forward, and be respectful to all of their employees. So.
And was the outcome as positive as it could have been, given the
I
circumstances?
think
or-
given the circumstances, we also gave them some advice on how to tighten up that policy and reviewed their entire handbook. So instead of just their administrator firing up the Google machine and pulling some language and plugging it in there, it happens all the time. And it's just like, it's too, it is too risky in today's employment environment to be doing those types of things. So, lesson learned.
Great, thank you. Tanya?
The number one lesson that I advise other people on and have eaten plenty of crow on myself on this one is marketing is truly the external driver of your business strategy. Marketing, while it looks like pretty pictures to a lot of people, that is your number one pitfall, is assuming that marketing is simply something that you can delegate to, have your nephew build your website because he can. And in addition to that, a holistic approach to marketing is absolutely imperative, and that means that you are looking at all of the marketing channels and the obvious stuff, but also looking at your marketing strategy is a driver of your business strategy. And does everybody in your organization understand what that strategy is, which is starting to bleed out into culture? And those are the two biggest drivers that I have seen in Europe, in the US, in small companies, in large companies. Culture will kill you, or it will make you. Your culture will help low performers rise. It will help star performers work better on a team. Culture is just absolutely imperative. Everybody in the organization needs to be aligned in supporting your business goals. And a huge problem that I see, again, under the umbrella of marketing is the external driver of your business strategy. Does everyone in your organization know your business strategy? Do they know your goals? Do they know what you're trying to accomplish as a business, as a team? Do they know what the expectations are of them? And that isn't traditionally looked at as marketing, but I feel very strongly that it is, because if people don't know what they're trying to accomplish, the chances of them doing it are slim to none. And if they do it, you don't know, why it worked or how it worked. So those are really important things that I have just seen companies fail on over and over and over. And we ourselves have failed. I was speaking with Meg earlier. We ourselves have failed on that many times, simply in thinking, I'm going to hire, these 5 smart people. They know how to do this. They've got experience. Go for it. And they need to be part of a team. They need to understand their goals. They need to understand what the team is doing, and that's all really, really imperative. So all strategies, all activities are purposeful, and they're aligned, and they work with your culture. That's another thing we see a lot of times is, yes, tactic A seems like a terrific idea, but you guys just aren't going to be able to execute it, or, the person who's in charge of that, their heart's not in it. Something is wrong here. So that is a hugely important part of this. Tactic A might be great overall, but tactic B is what's going to work for your organization. And finally, underneath that, I've touched on this a lot of times with other people, but social media can very much be a revenue generator and should be treated as a serious tool in your toolbox. And that is another thing that people, particularly people of a certain age, mine, are quick to say, oh, social media, that's a young people's game. I'm going to, my nephew can do that, whatever. No, that's basically delegating your sales and your branding to your nephew. You need to think very, very hard about this. It needs to be part of a holistic marketing strategy. It needs to reflect your culture, and your social media is just as important as your website, as when people walk in, as your business strategy. And again, does your receptionist know your business strategy? Very, very important.
Great, thank you. John?
I kind of looked at this from a different standpoint, kind of more of advice that I could give to small business owners. I don't know how many of you have banking relationships, but the lessons I've learned over the last 20 years is 2 main things. One is organization, and the second is communication. When you start off a banking relationship, with your banker, it's kind of like going on a first date. When you first meet, you're sitting across the table from each other, you're getting to know, one another, what you're all about, and, it's kind of your time to maybe brag about yourself a little bit. And the more prepared you are for the meeting, the more success you're going to have with that banker. And I would have some recommendations when you meet with the banker for the first time. Have a package ready to go. Have financial statements, personal financial statements, and the more that you're prepared for that meeting, again, the more successful you're going to be, and maybe develop a relationship with them. I'd say the second most important thing is probably communication. I've had customers that have kind of kept me in the dark on everything, and you don't find out that, something's going wrong with the company until maybe, one, the obvious, they, are slow to make payments, or two, you receive their financial information and you start seeing some issues. I always tell my customers that, yeah, it's great that, we're talking about when everything's good, but it's just as important, if not more important, to talk about things when they're bad. And, as a banker or as a bank, we are there for you to help you maybe come up with a solution. So, again, back to lessons I've learned. The most successful customers I have are organized ones that are prepared. They're willing to give you information, or willing to put you in contact with their accountant to get the information that you need. And again, they communicate with you, again, good times and in bad.
Great. Thank you very much. Dan?
Thanks, Rick. So we had 4 themes for this year. So Rick really tried to sell me on the idea of just 3 points, but I got 4.
Only 3, Dan, only 3.
So I didn't hear what you said, but maybe that's a good thing. Tell me later. So the 4 things are, and where we focused our energy this year, was growth, better collaboration inside of our business, being more productive, and being more secure. So I'll just share with you what we did in each one of those 4 areas. And from a growth standpoint, we picked a niche that Rick alluded to earlier. And so we said to ourselves, hey, if a company moved in next door and put us out of business in a year, how'd they do it? And they would have done it by focusing in each one of the niches that we have clients in, and then being a specialist to each of those types of clients. So we said, dentists. We're going to go after dentists. So we did. We tried. And I don't know if there's any dentists in the room. It didn't work for us. There's a variety of reasons which I can explain offline. And then we failed fast. And we said, you know what? This was not a good fit. They're just not in the same mindset of the type of client that we want to serve. So then we focused on CPA firms. And if you want to talk about highly complex technology requirements, CPA firms, I think today, are technology companies that just happen to do business finances and accounting and tax work. It's so technology dependent and complex and frankly fun. I really like that aspects of it.
That's the first time I've heard somebody today say a CPA firm is fun.
No. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm weird. I don't know. I like it. So we're going to be at the tax conference this week, both days. I can't wait. So just saying.
Give Brad a side gig as your BD guy.
Yeah.
Huh?
Wire talk later. All right. So pick a niche, and then I found just way more traction than we've ever had before when it comes to doing marketing and actually being intentional about our marketing. We've never gotten the type of traction or results and just that we've had in the last few months by being focused and picking the niche. Number 2, communicate and collaborate. So just this week alone, we eliminated 415 emails in our office, and we only have 7-8 people. We eliminated 415 emails that people had to sit, read, and respond to, or be copied on unnecessarily by using an app called Slack. It's free. It's easy to use. I see we have some fans in the house. That's awesome. If you're not using a collaboration tool, 2018 is the year to start and start reducing. So get this. In our office, we do 0 email between each other. That's right. We don't send emails to each other. We don't need to, because the right people are in the know when they need to know using this collaboration platform called Slack. And it's easy and fun and so forth. Number 3, maximizing productivity. Lesson learned this year, we finally moved off QuickBooks Pro, love QuickBooks Pro, and went to a cloud-based accounting platform called Xero, Xero. Lots of lessons from that. It was totally worth it. And then the big thing we did is we are automating our expense tracking. So we got 8 people wandering around with company credit cards that are all charging stuff, and it's hard to keep track of all that. And it's a pain. So using Expensify, we've equipped everybody with the mobile app. They can take a picture of a receipt, match it to a charge, and it goes right into our accounting software just with a click of a button approved by the manager. So it's going to save us a ton of time, improve our accuracy and timeliness of our books. All the things that make me happy. And finally, security and compliance. So 2018 is the year of automated social engineering penetration testing. It's a lot of
sounds dirty.
jargon. Yeah. Well, he said first date too, so I mean, anyway, we're all across the board. Anyway, what does that mean? It just means that you're ethically hacking your company every month. You are hiring somebody to try to hack into your company every single month, and when somebody clicks on something they're not supposed to click on, they get the opportunity to learn about what happened and why they clicked on something and how they were fooled. And then you as the owner manager get to understand who are the people that are clicking on things they shouldn't be clicking on, and provide them additional training and resources that they can use so they don't click on the wrong things that potentially expose your business to risk. Those are my 4 points. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Brad?
I guess I would start off with saying, as a business owner, one of the things that I've seen through the years is business owners sometimes feel like they're out on an island. And I would just recommend or suggest that you always have a mentor or somebody to go to. In a lot of cases, that can be me as an advisor. But depending on the size of the company, I've seen lots of companies with formal or informal advisory boards, or somebody that they can go to help them run their business. Secondly, I've also seen situations where, and some of my clients have done it to me, but the end of the year comes and they say, oh, by the way, I did this. And you go, I wish you would have called me before you did this, because we could have structured it differently, saved a bunch of taxes, things like that. So that kind of goes along with the talk to people before you do stuff. Don't just jump ahead and do things. Also, with our clients, we certainly like to do tax planning. Sometimes after the end of the year, when we're doing tax returns, it's too late because transactions have happened and things like that. So now is the time to be looking at your situation. There are things that can be complex to do. There can be things as simple as if you've got children that you can employ in your business. It's an easy way of shifting some income. Pay them whatever the IRS will buy off on. If they're emptying trash once a week, it's hard to pay them $10,000 to do that, but, get creative. But every bit that you can pay your children is less taxable income to yourself. The other benefit of doing that is if you pay your kids $5,000 or $6,000, you can zap a Roth IRA in their name at an early age, and someday when you're dead and gone, they'll thank you for doing that. So it's simple things like that. There's also things, lots of retirement plan options that can skew contributions toward the highly compensated, which are typically the business owners. So lots of tax planning ideas, and if, as you know, in the news right now, there's a lot of tax things going on, which gets us really excited because we got some different planning to do. But unfortunately, Congress hasn't given us new tax laws real timely in the past 2 years. Usually it's like December 30th, which kind of limits what you can do. But, we looks like there might be big changes ahead. So this year, tax planning is even more important. And sometimes people think tax planning is only for the years where I make a lot of money. And quite honestly, tax planning is just as important if you have a down year or you actually maybe lose money. You don't want to get stuck with negative taxable income at times if you can help it, because you lose the benefit of personal exemptions and itemized deductions, things like that. So in those situations, an easy fix, if you have a retirement plan or an IRA, an easy fix to that is you can create income for yourself by converting an IRA to a Roth IRA. And it's free tax, it's free money for you, really. So opportunities like that, different situations, they can apply whether you're making a bunch of money or if you're having a down year. Tax planning is important in all those situations.
So tax planning, if you don't mind, maybe we can even stay there. Are there other specific things? Oh, by the way, I was going to just lay out for the rest of the day. I had a question for each of them that I wanted to ask, but I thought the content would be valuable to the group. And then anybody who has questions can raise their hand and we'll weave those in. So I was just going to give everybody one question, then we'll get an opportunity for you folks to participate. So if we're staying there about tax planning, end of the year's coming up, do you have a laundry list of things that you might advise people to look at, given the time of year we're talking about?
Yeah, unfortunately, like I said, we're not too sure what the law might look like a year from now. If you've read the papers, it looks like tax rates are going to come down for most people, which would indicate you'd want to push income off to next year. But that's not always the case, and quite honestly, I haven't analyzed it to death because it's going to change 10 times before it ends up, but I'm not sure what impact it's going to have for the middle market people or what, because one of the big things at the end of the year here to watch, in Minnesota, we're in a high tax state. So, they're talking about taking the state tax deduction away from individuals. They're also pushing that the alternative minimum tax is going to go away, which a lot of people fall into. And quite honestly, if they take the state tax deduction away, nobody'd be in the AMT anyway. So it's kind of a moot point. It's probably more of a political game that they're playing. But the state tax deduction, if that does go away this year, if you are not in the alternative minimum tax, it makes it all the more important to pay those state taxes in December here and not just pay it with your tax return in April if you owe the state money. There are also talks of limiting real estate taxes to $10,000 a year, which if you've got a cabin up north or have a valuable home here in the Twin Cities, it's easy to go over that $10,000 mark, so that's going to hurt some people. If your taxes are less than $10,000, you can consider, again, if you're not an alternative minimum tax, you can actually go down to the courthouse and pay next year's taxes before the end of December and take a deduction this year because they may go away next year. We don't know. So there's lots of different things that can do. It really depends on where some of this new tax law ends up, which unfortunately we don't know right now for sure. So hopefully Congress gets together and we see something so we have time to do some stuff.
That's totally
Okay, great. On the theme of financial-driven questions, let's stay there for a moment. Dan, what types of technology spends might people do that deliver, in your mind anyway, the best ROI or the best improvements in productivity, so kind of the best bang for their buck?
We asked ourselves that same question this year. We're a tech company, of course, and we use the same stuff that our clients use. So we asked ourselves the same question, and we just got everybody basically newer computers. And I know it kind of sounds cliche, but newer, faster computers. We've got a bunch of millennials. They like to have the latest gear with the fastest processors and the latest operating systems. They're actually more productive on that. We let everybody pick their own platform, so if they want to be on Mac or PC or whatever. And then the other thing is there's this new trend genre of gigantic monitors, 40-plus inch monitors. So we did not invest in those yet because we're waiting for the 5K ones to come out. So most of them are 4K, and at 40 inches, 4K it's acceptable, okay?
It's not exactly a phone.
Right. But at 40 inches, a 5K monitor would be really nice. So that just means how many of those little dots they're jamming into that size screen. The more dots, the better. Okay, more dots means nice, sharp picture. So we only have one of those big 40-something inch monitors. Other than that, I'd already mentioned that investing in and migrating to and going through the pain of migrating to cloud-based software for us has been just huge. And in addition to the benefits I'd already mentioned regarding kind of automation, just the ability now for me to pull up updated income statement, balance sheet, dashboard, and financials on the fly and get live kind of ratios, profitability, I see, like gross margin ratios and things like that, assets to liabilities, kind of on the go, live, has been super, super helpful. And you just couldn't do that when QuickBooks is installed on a computer sitting somewhere. So that would be the second thing, would be investing in the applications, cloud-based applications. And then the last thing would be probably mobile. I think there's a new generation of smartphones and mobile technology coming out. We've been investing in those and trying to equip our team with the latest kind of gadgets to help them on the go, stay productive. And then also with those new gadgets comes better security. So, two new types of biometrics and things like that, which will help keep our client data safe. So, if there's some extra money sitting around at the end of the year, that's where we spent it. And for whatever reason, our bank was really, really happy to give us money to buy that stuff.
It's because you have all that stuff at your fingertips and you can send it right to your banker.
Yeah,
They want it quick.
true.
And they can look at it immediately and make a decision.
That is,
Your
Turn it
banker's on
around.
Slack, right?
yeah. So that said, from a cash flow standpoint, probably should talk to my CPA about, the tax implications of all of it. But from a cash flow standpoint, it's pretty easy to go forward and give our team the latest and greatest gear. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Tanya, let's stick to kind of this ROI topic here for one more question. Old marketing adage is that 50% of your marketing's working, you just don't know which 50%. So in today's environment where marketing's changing almost on a daily basis, what kind of technologies and solutions and marketing spend are you seeing as the best ROI or bang for your buck on the marketing side?
Sure, absolutely. Hands down, strategy is your number one thing to spend money on when it comes to marketing. As I was saying before, the clear strategy aligned with your business goals and telling everybody in your organization, if that's the only marketing you did, that would be, if that's all you could afford, that's what you should do. That strategy and those goals need to be understood, as I said, from reception to C-suite, whatever that looks like for you. That's going to allow everybody to make decisions and kind of buy into that, and it's going to strengthen your culture, which is going to strengthen your organization overall for marketing. And really empower your culture. But one thing, though, is it's very specific to say is the investment in marketing, however you want to slice up your 50%. The investment in marketing, if you spend it wisely, if you spend $100 on marketing with your proverbial nephew doing social media, that is $99 down the tubes unless you're hoping he's going to buy you dinner. What you need to be doing is understanding that your investment in marketing is truly an investment, and you need to be getting a return on that. If you're spending money on marketing and you're not getting a return, stop. And that is just hands down how it is. When we work with clients, we do ask for 3 months to kind of get things rolling, but you need to be seeing a return on that right away. And what with social media and technology these days, you can attribute a huge amount of your spend, and that is what you should be doing. You should be demanding a lot from your marketing dollars, but you should be putting in a lot more marketing dollars, because with social media, it's very easy to get to a spot where you're putting a nickel in and you're getting a dime out, and that's what you should be looking for after several months.
With a lot of metrics and milestones and
and being able to know this is where my customer is, and I'm serving them what they want, and I'm not just kind of ticking the marketing box. I'm actually doing something strategic.
What did your nephew do to you at Thanksgiving?
He's a rough kid. He's in trouble.
obviously doesn't do his social media work well enough.
Not for me.
Yeah, all right. Kristen, you talked a little bit about that scenario with that company that had some issues. Kind of feeds into the question that I wanted to ask you to have you share with everyone is, typical small company, you got people wearing multiple hats, there's not enough people, there's not enough time, there's not enough money, everybody's kind of scrambling, and sometimes HR gets pushed to the side a little bit. So what's kind of the implication of waiting too long to get organized on the HR side?
Yeah, I mean, I guess this kind of goes back to a lot of what, you're reading the headlines right now with Fox News and Wells Fargo and Uber and, pick your big company again, small companies not immune to that. I talk with a lot of business owners who look at an HR platform, look at Insperity, and they're like, I think we're good. Like, they don't want to spend any money on that. And then they'll contact me a year later, and they're like, we've got a mess, we've got a problem, come in here, we should have worked with you a year ago. It happens all the time. So good for my business, not good for their business, right? So, as you're looking at spending dollars in that area of your business, I mean, carefully consider it. It's not just an expense, and it's an investment into your business. It helps you get a better ROI out of your employees. It reduces your risks so that you can keep more dollars in your pocket. At the end of the day, HR is not there to be your friend. It's there to keep your company safe, right? That is why you need to have HR in place. I've been loving what Tanya's been saying about culture, and one of my favorite quotes about culture that I just ran across lately, but it's just like, oh my gosh, it spoke to me. And Tanya was reading it off my page. She was like, yes. And before I tell you what it is, a lot of times when I sit down and I talk with business owners, I will ask them, tell me about your culture here. Like, why do people like to come to work here? When they walk through the doors each day, what is it about your company that helps Tanya, Dan, be successful? And conversely, what gets in their way? What is it about your culture here that is not helping whatever employee accomplish their goals? A lot of times I get we would let them wear jeans on Friday. We do barbecues on once a month in the summertime. It's like, those are really great perks. That does not speak to your culture at all. It does not speak to your employment brand and your ability to attract and retain those great employees that are going to move your business forward. So with that in mind, here's my little culture quote. So your culture is defined by the worst behavior tolerated by your leadership. So there again, your culture is defined by the worst behavior tolerated by your leadership. So spend money on your HR. It's important, folks.
All right, as we've seen multiple times, for sure. Thank you. John, what comes to mind from my perspective with the banking community is a lot of times people don't necessarily know exactly how to interact with their banker. So maybe you could give us an example of a long-term relationship you've had, how the other side of the table can manage that with you and make sure that they're doing things that they should be to make your world easier, and how might they prepare to come to you with a request for a loan?
An example, I provide financing for a very large multifamily developer, owner, manager. They have in excess of 30,000 units throughout the United States. We're a small bank. We have a legal lending limit of $4.5 million, so we're very limited on what they can do with them. But they deal with a lot of local banks here in town, and so they've had a lot of experience and interaction with bankers, so they know how to put together a financing package. They know everything that needs to be included in it. They know that they need to do that if they want a quick turnaround time. It eliminates a lot of the back and forth of, oh, can you send me this? Oh, I read through this, now can you send me this? A typical package that they put together consists of a cover letter that states, how much money they want to borrow, what they're going to use it for, how they're going to pay it back. And then included with that are typically the financials for the entity that they're going to be borrowing money for, along with not only historical numbers, but also projections. This is where we think we're going to be going in the next 3-4 years. In addition, they will include tax returns, personal financial statements, personal tax returns, and they'll even include bios on the principals of the company. These are the individuals that are behind the company. this is, where they've been, this is what they've done, here's their experience. We're kind of when we put together, and then we take all that information in, and then we put together our loan committee package that would go to a various loan committee. If we have all that information at our fingertips, again, we can turn it around relatively quickly. But if we have to go back and forth and ask for that information, or we have to go look you up on the internet, we might, we're very good at plagiarizing stuff from the internet, bios and stuff, LinkedIn pages and things like that. But we might find some stuff that, might not be accurate. So if you have all that information prepared, then we know exactly what we're dealing with.
Right, great. Okay, so I have more questions for these folks. With that said, I got through the part that I wanted to get through. These other things, I can continue to tick off them. With that said, here's a great opportunity to turn it over to you and give you all an opportunity to participate to some degree if you would like. So if anybody would like to chime in with a question, we can have at the panel. Looks like you want to there in the blue. Sir.
Oh, I want to ask Brad, part of the thing they're debating in the tax plan is the pass-through provision for sub-S corporations. And if it's implemented, how might that affect anyone in the room, I guess, who's a sub-S?
Referring to the lower tax rate?
Yeah, it's essentially dropping it from the personal rate to a...
So right now, there's talk about, well, excuse me, the C Corp rates are going to be dropping to 20% right now. So to compensate so that everybody doesn't go back to being a C Corp, S Corps, partnerships, pass-through entities, right now the proposal is to take 30% of the net income and tax it at a lower rate as basically capital gain rate. 70% will be at ordinary income. So, and really how they came up with that 70-30 is in their minds, they figure 30% of your net income is a return on your investment. So right now with, say, an S corporation, the idea is always, owner salaries is always a topic that people look at, or the IRS looks at. They want to see a reasonable salary. There might be games played with that, with this lower rate. It's still going to fall under the what's reasonable for a salary or not. But it's clearly going to change the way we've looked at how that has been in the past. We'll probably want to decrease salaries even more, increase the net income so 30% of it can be taxed at a lower rate. So, we talk about tax planning. There's the gray area in the middle, and some people like to take advantage of that to the fullest. Others are more conservative. I think with some of these new laws, there's going to be some more games to be played, and it'll depend on how far you want to push the envelope.
So pick up the phone and call your accountant, right?
Call your accountant, yeah.
All right. Over there. Yes, sir.
I have a question about, mostly for Kristen and Tanya, I think, but around culture. And I guess the question is, when you're looking at hiring people in, how do you broadcast that culture out so they can almost hopefully filter out, right? So you don't have that weird executive sending that email. And then also, how does that culture affect marketing?
I'll let you tell.
Did we hear that over here? You folks hear that okay? All right.
So one of the things that we do when we're working with our clients is first of all, do they have a defined culture? Have they worked through that process? Does their leadership understand that? And then when they're doing the interview process, and even backing up before that, so whatever the job description might look like, does the job description include language that is inclusive of the culture? Because I think everybody probably has been in a situation where you've interviewed somebody, their background is perfect, their education is perfect, and then they come into the business and it's not a fit, which I think is kind of the point of your question of where you're going. And so how do you get to that? So it's about living it every day, making sure that every person in the business understands that and then is weaving that into your interview process and talking with that. So you've got the language to be able to talk about your culture, because culture is a tough thing to talk about. So that's why you have to have a plan, you have to have the language to talk about it, you have to know it, you have to own it. And then whoever is interviewing those candidates, you should think ahead of time, what kind of questions can I be asking this candidate that will help me determine if they're going to be a good fit into this culture or not. So those are the types of things that we coach on. So all the way from starting in the beginning to, because you can't just say, okay, today when we interview somebody, we're going to ask them culture questions. You know, it's like you have to back the train up and start at the beginning and be authentic about it.
And one specific way that Macleod & Co. has addressed some of that also is that we talk about culture before the interview, and we actually look for what kind of questions the interviewee asks us to help us determine kind of where they're coming from, which is an informal thing that you can do in a small organization.
That's actually, I guess my question was more of like, I sense at least like Uber's culture is really starting to affect their business, right? And that people are not willing, and Lyft is really smart about saying, oh, every time you take a ride with us, we'll donate to some place. And so that's where I was going, like, how does the culture affect, you know, not only business operations, but your marketing?
Yeah, and for us, that's really big, and we see it a lot in our clients as well. How it affects marketing in a very from a tactical perspective is, as I mentioned before, the things that your organization can do. And when I say can, I mean capable, but I also mean fits inside of your brand or your culture. And for instance, for Lyft to say, yeah, we're going to give something away for this, if they did something else and said, we're going to institute a tipping our drivers policy. Those would be two very different, there's an expenditure that's just the same, but I as a customer feel differently. And I, as a Lyft person, also feel differently about those two things. One of them is, you know, to me, and maybe as in the culture for that, they might say something like, okay, we want to tip the driver, but we're going to make an internal, you know, giving thing or something of that nature. But so how it affects the marketing is this cause marketing? In the Lyft example, is that cause marketing something that's pulling the wool over on the customers? Or is that something that is inherent to the culture of the business and the Lyft drivers are feeling it? And that's where I think that as an example of cause marketing could go right or wrong. Does that?
Yeah, that's right.
Right here.
I don't know if Tanya or Dan, which one of you would like to take a stab at this question, perhaps both of you, but Dan, you had mentioned in taking a look at your financial statements, looking at gross profitability, which means that you've got your team doing some type of time tracking to be able to identify profitability, and Tanya, I'm assuming that you have this as well.
Absolutely.
As this relates to culture, how have you been successfully communicating to the staff as to the why that you're needing them to keep track of the time and not just add in additional hours or not keep track of the real amount of time if they either like the client or don't?
We're probably going to have the same answer.
Why don't you go ahead?
We track it to individual profitability and individual billable hours so that the individual knows how they're contributing to the team. And then we also have a team kind of billable as well. So it's not, and where our financials are fairly transparent to the team so they can see where money is or isn't. And it did amaze me as a business owner how long it took to help the team understand that while we are not physically pulling hours off of a shelf and selling them, we are pulling hours off of a shelf and selling them. And when we don't get money for the hours that we have put in, we're not a business, we're a charity. And guess what? We're not a charity. So that has been just helping people understand, but I was a little surprised at how long it took.
So our business model is just a little bit different. We sell managed services, so it's a fixed monthly fee based on the size of our clients. So the amount of quote-unquote billable hours that each of our people track doesn't directly correlate with how much we would bill a client. However, we have a scorecard, we have a dashboard for metrics, for goals, for productivity, and it also gives us idea of which clients maybe we're spending a little too much time on, which clients we need to have an account management conversation with them about some piece of technology that we are kind of like keep dragging. And so the way that we address it so that it's adding value for our team to take the time to track their time is probably those three things. Number one, it helps us identify client issues that we can then go have a conversation with that client about getting rid of that old piece of technology. Number two, it helps us make sure that we're giving the team enough resources and time, and helps us understand if we need to bring in some more help, or if we're really getting overloaded and busy. We can find that out in real time and make adjustments to the schedule of everybody's schedule in real time. So it really is a team tool. And then the last piece is it helps us, and the reason I think people don't put in kind of fake time is it's how we track our documentation too. So like if Joe picks up where Bryce left off, it's really important from a team standpoint that Joe, he puts his time in at the same time as he documented the work that he did. So we try to make it streamlined and simple. I will mention that getting that transition several years ago to people to we call it working in real time and documenting and tracking things in real time, was a difficult transition, and not everybody on the team when we made that transition was able to make it. And speaking of culture, we just wove that degree of working, we call it working in real time, tracking your work right into the culture, and made it part of like, hey, this is what you do to support your team. Is that helpful? Right on.
Can I chime? I know the question wasn't for me, but I actually have experience with that. And when you're talking about the timeline or the curve for people to like get it and understand it, and it depends on if your company can do this or not. But we tied those metrics to the profitability of the company and the compensation for each of those employees. And let me tell you, get their attention really quick when their compensation is tied to it. So any bonuses, those types of things. So they got it like that. Yep.
John, from the bank's perspective, maybe talk a little bit about the culture and kind of managing that, as well as getting the DNA kind of spread out to the community, the whole bank, as well as maybe some of the metric stuff and tracking, employee tracking things that we're talking to.
We're kind of old school, you know. We're not real time or anything like that. I mean, most of our employees are, salaried or hourly. Again, so we're kind of very traditional. Talking to Kristen at the beginning of before this, talking about maybe it's time as a bank that we should be looking at maybe updating or talking to a third party about HR, how they could help us out. We've had an internal HR person for the past, since we opened 17 years ago. We're a small bank. We have about 28 employees. It's interesting over the as we've grown. I mean, when we first started out, there were 8 of us, and our culture, we were a very tight-knit, close group of friends that had worked together previously. As we've grown over the years, now I think we have around 28, 30 employees. Our culture has kind of changed a little bit. I mean, we're not that close-knit group of people that we used to be, because there's other people that have been coming in, and there's been some challenges with that. And so, you're trying to integrate people that aren't familiar with this initial culture, trying to bring them into that culture, and it's interesting when they don't fit. It really can bring the culture of the company down. So you have to be really smart about who you hire and how they are going to fit into that culture. But also, the initial culture of the 8 guys, the good old boys club, if you want to call it that, we've also had to learn how to kind of adapt our culture to the new generation of people coming in. We're dealing, we hire a lot of new millennials, and it's a lot different than how it was when I got into banking 20 years ago.
Great, thank you. Other questions? Yeah, Rick.
Tanya, you talked about expecting to put in a nickel and get a dime out of your social media. There's a whole plethora of different kinds of social media out there. If you want to focus on business to business kind of transactions, could you give a kind of a hierarchy of where you might focus your efforts? And maybe a concrete example of where someone put in a nickel and got a dime out?
Question, in case not everybody heard it, was social media, putting in a dime, or putting in a nickel, getting a dime out, and where to prioritize activities with all the different options you have. And so that was a question if you didn't hear it on the sides.
Yeah, and business to business being key to that. So social media, again, and from a holistic perspective, there's a couple of things that need to be done. You need awareness. So you, just like any other marketing program, so you need awareness of your product or service. You need a connection with your customer and, and a brand through that. And then you need to ask for the sale. And obviously you don't, you would never just walk up to a stranger and ask for the sale first and then explain your business. So it's, you need a strategy that's going to be specific to the business and specific to your business strategy and goals. But if I was being very, very generic, I might say LinkedIn is obviously a great B2B tool. It's a great B2B spot to talk about your business and your, the problem that you solve, or, your solutions packet. So that's great. But there you're in kind of a forum almost. People are talking about business. It's not a lot. People don't go there to be sold to. They go to the internet. They go to Google to be sold to. So you might want to have LinkedIn as your kind of cornerstone for telling your story. And then you are going to use SEO as kind of your cornerstone for asking for the sale or bringing people to your website or that type of a thing. And then using other places to make the sale. And maybe your sale gets made only in real life. And, a banking would be a great example. I highly doubt that there's anybody who's going to make a deposit entirely over the internet without ever walking into a branch. So you're using these different channels to drive people through the whole process. And that's the advantage of a holistic marketing approach, because it goes from, okay, what is it that we want people to do? Make deposits. Who do we want to have make deposits? These people. What are they thinking? What are they doing? And we just go back and back and back and back to try to make that plan and to make that strategy. And once that's figured out, that's when you say, okay, we're going to put $500 a month into LinkedIn advertising, just whatever. And that's going to be, we're going to measure and we're going to see what impressions we get, but then we're going to put $1,500 a month into SEO, and we can follow a lot of times where those people are going. So we can say, yeah, this wasted money over here on LinkedIn isn't wasted, it's telling people what to Google. So that it's a little complex, but did that address your question?
What is SEO?
I'm sorry, search engine optimization, and like when you go into Google and you type in, red shoes, you get an ad that pops up with a red shoe company. So that type of thing, and so buying those Google ads, and also optimizing your website so that Google knows that when somebody types in best type of account for a new baby, you're going to come up.
Or you put in Edina Banking, and then Crown Bank comes up, and then below that,
Well,
Highland Bank comes up.
Well, and it would just be who spent more on SEO. That's all I'm saying. I'm available after.
And then Tanya, what's its jab, hook? Or?
Yeah, actually, thank you for reminding me. There's a terrific book by Gary Vaynerchuk called Jab, Right Hook, and I highly recommend getting it. It's a little old, but it talks about different kinds of posts. But I'll tell you what the title means. When you are out talking to somebody, the jabs are things that you're giving, and then the right hook is your ask, is your get. So if you were advertising your donut shop, you might say something about congratulations to Boy Scout Troop XYZ who came in and bought a whole bunch of donuts today for their big celebration, and happy birthday to Maud, and then hey, we're having a 20% off sale on Saturday. So your jabs are things people are interested in because you're in their feed and that you're a guest in their feed, and your right hooks are we're friends now, so I can ask you for something.
And say the book title one more time.
Jab, Right Hook by Gary Vaynerchuk, and I'm not sure I'm saying that last name right.
And we won't ask you to spell it either.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Jab, Right Hook will get you there.
All right, thank you. Other questions? Over here.
Actually, a question for Dan. This is getting kind of maybe a little tricky, but you mentioned productivity, and we're 4 co-founders, and I'm everything but the coding. So I'm looking at things like Zapier and IFTT, and they're kind of a pain to set up, and to make the process change, I have to go back. I'm just wondering if you guys had found anything that is faster, that can integrate all the cloud services, and what's the security risk?
I'm going to propose that we probably take that one offline. It's very specific, and be happy to talk to you about that. I will just say, when we've set up our cloud apps, none of us are coders. Well, okay, we have one guy who can write some scripts and things, but none of us are coders. So I try to set everything up that doesn't require that. And so when I've connected, my example before was Xero with Expensify. Well, they already went through the trouble and wrote, and then they manage and maintain the integration. So I don't have to deal with it or have to worry about it, or when somebody changes their code, I don't have to update anything. And that has worked really well, and how I've kind of been able, believe it or not, we can accomplish a lot by just working with integrations that people have already written. And in many cases, Expensify kind of provides, I think, the connection with Xero, for example. But in some cases, take a little bit closer look, I've found that there's sometimes third-party companies that even for their own purposes wrote a really nice connection and then license it out, and they, again, maintain and manage it. So happy to talk to you offline, though, about other ways to do that, though. Thank you.
Yes, Keith.
Dan, I was going to ask if maybe you could go just one layer deeper on the collaboration and avoiding emails between your team. That's really interesting.
So the question was how we go a little more detailed, how we reduce the amount of email volume that we're having in the office, literally to zero. So again, we run a service desk. Everybody, well, and that's not true anymore. I mean, we got our marketing person in LA. My business partner was in London, and so we use this application called Slack. And it's not the only one out there. There's other competitive applications. As she mentioned, it is one of the better ones, and has the most kind of integrations with other tools. But here's how we use it. Everybody's got it up on their computer, and then there's different what we call channels. So there's one channel that's like a broadcast, everybody sees it, and there's lots of cat memes and things of that nature, and the occasional,
It's the most interesting channel.
It is the most interesting channel. There's a lot going on, but it's noisy. And so some people just maybe mute that one or whatever. But when a call comes in, instead of taking a message or whatever, you just send a direct message in one of the other channels. You can send a direct message to people individually, just one-on-one. And then depending on the working groups that you have, it's all set up. So you don't have to CC and add to the two-line the right people, just depending on which group you have. So we have a marketing channel, so just the marketing people talk on that one. Then we maybe have a temporary project going for a particular client. We set up a channel for that. We shut it down when we're done, so that it's very focused. And the only people who see the information are the people that need to see the information. And in the world of compliance and everything else, all of that history is logged for forever, so that it's easy to go back and reference something, much easier than it is to go back and get caught up on an email thread. We can add people to the team, and they can see the history and the conversations and what's been going on. You can't do that in an email thread very easily.
And if you're an anal retentive business owner and you just want to see what's going on in the middle of the night, awesome.
Does that answer your question? Happy to talk offline too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Slack. All right. A couple of kind of summary questions from my standpoint, so let's kind of hit some answers and keep it short and sweet. In your various areas of expertise, what items add the most value or have the highest positive impact in your estimation? So why don't we start down there and come on down. So, Brad?
Well, in addition to tax planning, which we've talked a lot about, I won't go into that, but one thing we haven't talked at all about today is succession planning. And when you have partners, part of the succession planning might be buy-sell agreements. So I can't stress enough the importance of having a buy-sell agreement. Everybody thinks that their partners and them will live forever. And we see in the news every day, accidents happen, people pass away. And when you don't have a solid buy-sell agreement, that can get really messy. So if anything you take out of this, I would say make sure you have buy-sell agreements if you have partners in your business with you.
Great, thanks. Dan?
Maybe I'll just two things. I'll tack on to what you said, and then we just made sure that our buy-sell agreement was properly funded, because now it's been a good couple of years. The business valuation is going up, making sure that it's funded well. We just tweaked all that. And then the other thing that I learned this year was we put together a board of advisors. It turns out people will help you just because they want to, and all you have to do is buy them lunch. And they have provided us critical information. We put a bunch of CPAs in a room together. They helped us better understand the market, and we learned so much, and they're just so willing to help. And it was definitely a worthwhile endeavor, and we're going to continue doing it.
Great, thanks. John?
Most value or most impact, banking, I put a lot of reliance on character, so I think that's probably the number one thing that I look at. And the other thing that has the most impact from my standpoint is, the detail of financial information that they provide to us. So as a small business owner, again, back to the communication thing, always be in contact with your banker, always tell them what's going on. And, again, provide them as much detailed financial information as you possibly can.
Great, thank you. Tanya?
The biggest positive impact that I see is communication of your strategy to all levels of your organization. Simple like that. When everybody knows what's going on, everybody can contribute.
Super, thank you. Kristen?
So there's been a lot of conversation about finances and dollars, and so thinking about what Insperity does and how we impact our clients. So benefits and how we go to market for our clients is one of our value propositions. So we're not a broker. What we do is we pool or aggregate all of our clients together. There's about 8,000 on that particular platform. And so we leverage that buying power when we buy direct from United Healthcare. And so we've done an amazing job of managing healthcare costs in a really kind of turbulent environment out there. Over the last 5 years, our clients have seen an average increase of 2.86%. 10-year retrospective is 4.4%. So if you're looking for ways to use your dollars to move your business forward instead of paying for benefits, it's a great way.
Okay. All right, so last question. We just went through and everybody talked about high impact and valuable things. Let's go the other way. Hey, watch out for this. Don't do this. Takeaway for everybody on the don't do this. Any order, whoever wants to jump
I'll start with that, I guess. I've seen many times over the years business owners pulling money out of the business when the business can't support that. So part of that maybe is understanding financial statements, knowing where things are at. But, as a business owner, it doesn't give you a right to have an ATM card to the bank account. So I've seen companies get in trouble with that, not recognizing maybe a downturn in business soon enough. So be careful of that.
Yeah, I'll just share that to stay ahead of the technology curve as much as you can, and be proactive and intentional, just as you're intentional about the finances in your business and intentional about the people in your business. Be intentional about the technology being in your business as well. Plan it out, invest in it, and be pragmatic.
Great, thank you. John?
I just reiterate what you said, between now and the end of the year, and, things that they shouldn't be doing is, pulling money out of the, I think we run into this all the time this time of year, pulling money out of their checking account, businesses that live out of their checking account and don't plan for the future. I mean, it's probably the biggest mistake we see.
Okay, great, thank you. Tanya?
The biggest thing that I recommend people avoid is what I call marketing myopia. So that's talking to yourself in your strategy, talking to yourself in your marketing. This is what happens when you're too close to your marketing and you think average Joe cares about what you're selling. They don't. You have to make them care, so you need to really get an outside perspective on your marketing. Biggest thing to avoid.
Great, thank you. Kristen?
Probably one of the biggest errors or snags that I see out there is for those companies that are still managing their employees, all their employee files, time and attendance, performance management, name your piece of HR that you're trying to manage, and they're still doing it on paper. There's a lot of mistakes, and you can open yourself up to a lot of liabilities. I had a company called me just 2 weeks ago and said, you need to help me. It was the general manager who was wearing the HR hat, and he had let 4 employees go early spring and just realized he was still paying their benefits after all this time because he missed it. And so he's like, this can't continue to happen. And doing everything on paper, it's just like, don't do your HR on paper. There's low cost, easy entry into bringing technology to your people's side of your business.
Great, thank you. Thank you all for being here. We have the room as long as anyone wants to stay. feel free to mingle and so forth. For more information on Upsize Magazine, the website is upsizemag.com. In essence, a transcript or a story about today's event will be in the next issue. For information on Club Entrepreneur, go to clube.com. And happy holidays to everybody. Belated happy Thanksgiving. And let's give the panel a round of applause.